I had an experience about 30 years ago, and in this experience, a little magical event happened that shaped the whole future of my life. And what happened was, I went to a party that I didn't particularly want to go to. I've never been a real big party person anyway, but this particular party had some meaning for me because it was the engagement party for a colleague of mine who, believe it or not, is a family therapist, but this was to be his 5th marriage. And I had known him through marriages 2, 3, and 4, and I didn't have high hopes for number 5. But Katie was relatively new in town at the time, and so I wanted her to meet people and that kind of thing. So we went to this party, and during the party, I wandered off looking around the house. It was this big, beautiful house, and I wandered into the library of the house, and I was looking through books and just getting a little quiet time. And I was in there, browsing, and a tall, bald gentleman of about 60 years of age came into the library, and he started leafing through books too, and he didn't say anything to me, and I didn't say anything to him. So what happened was, finally we turned to each other and said something like, "I guess you don't like small talk either, right? Or parties either." And he said, yeah, the small talk drives me crazy. And so I said, "Well, me too." And he said, "Well, how about let's have only some big talk then, if we're going to talk to each other?" I said, "Okay, that's a great idea." I said, "What would you like to talk about?" And he said, "Well, I almost died a little while ago." And I said, "Oh, okay." He said he had been very ill and almost died. And I said, "Well, what was that like?" And he said, "Well, now I think it's probably the best thing that ever happened to me." And I said, "Wow, why?" And he said, "Because it left me with a question that I've been asking myself, and every time I ask myself the question, I get more in touch with who I am and what I want in my life." And he said, "I've reinvented my whole life over the past 6 months since I discovered this question." So guess what my next question was? What's the question? And so I'll ask it to you just like Ed asked it to me. Imagine yourself looking back over your whole life from the end of your life. Imagine, roll the clock forward however many years you think you're going to be around, 30 or 40 years or 10 years or whatever you think, and put yourself at an imaginary end point in your life. And imagine that I come to visit you and I say, "Was your life a success?" And you're either going to say, "Yes, it was," or "No, it wasn't." If you said, "Yes, it was," what would be the one thing above all that you'd be referring to that made your life a success? And if your life were not a success, imagine saying, "No, my life wasn't a success." What would be the one thing that you'd be referring to that made your life not a success? Well, at the moment he asked me that question, my mind kind of went whoosh. And I'd never really thought of that before. And I was in my early 30s at the time, and or maybe 34, something like that, so maybe mid-30s. And I hadn't really done anything like think about my life that way. And so it really, just in that moment, I said, "Well, to be honest, I'd have to say, no, my life had not been a success." And he said, "Why? What is that one thing?" And I'd say, "Well, the one thing is that I really want to create a long-lasting love relationship with a woman with whom I can grow and we can grow together over time." And until that came out of my mouth, I don't think I'd realized that was the most important thing in my life. See, by then I'd already published a few books, and I was a professor and had gotten my PhD, and so things were going great in that area of my life. But when I really tuned into it, I realized if I were at the end of my life and I had to say, no, I had never created a really great relationship, well, what good is a PhD in counseling psychology from Stanford if I can't learn to get along with one person, And so I realized that above all else, that was the one thing that would make my life a success. And he said, "Have you experienced that yet?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, get busy, and